West Ham are winning the transfer window right now in the Premier League, signing German striker Nicholas Füllkrug from Dortmund, as well as Max Kilman from Wolves. Guido Rodriguez is another incredible signing for their midfield, and Somerville from Leeds, who was one of the best championship players last season. But amazingly, West Ham aren't stopping there and also went and signed Jean-Claire Todibo from Nice as well. They are building a fantastic side, and all under new manager Lopetegui. Well, that's until they heard that I really wanted the job instead. So the West Ham board have decided to put me in charge, but it isn't going to be easy, because they want European qualification in the very first season. And it doesn't stop there, because there's also a 10-year plan. And on the list is the FA Cup. The board want me to win 3 in the next 10 years. Going through to the Premier League, they also want 3 titles in the next 10 seasons too. And finally, they want more European trophies, and especially that first ever Champions League for West Ham. So the board have definitely stamped their ambition with the signings that they have made and the targets that they have set for me, including European qualification in this first season. But can I live up to the task as West Ham manager? There were rumours of another signing coming in the door in Wan-Bissaka at West Ham as I joined the club. But on day 1 of the role, I decided he wasn't in my plan, so I cancelled the move. Because instead, I had my eyes on Sildilia, who can play naturally at right back, right wing back, or at centre back. And although he will cost me a lot more, he's a better option in my opinion. And we made him a hammer in no time at all for a package deal just above £50 million. Money for that transfer was raised through selling £26 million worth of players, including Maxwell Cornet and Vladimir Sofal, meaning we have no right back. And that's because the system I'm thinking of playing is actually a 3 at the back. And I think West Ham have the players to make this work, including some very good wingers that I can use for defensive and offensive. And this is how I'm originally thinking of setting up. Füllkrug as a pressing forward is actually quite good. He's got a good amount of aggression, he can hold up the ball, he can kind of do the defensive duty from the front. Kudus as a shallow striker is just perfect. Bowen I'm kind of intrigued with keeping here, so we've got 2 wingers. But if it doesn't start working, I might stick him up front. The defensive wing is one of my favourite roles right now, and James Ward-Prowse I think is perfect for it. That delivery from the right-hand side with his crossing, not to mention his work rate, is perfect for a defensive winger. We got 2 really good CDMs now, both who can win the ball. Lucas Paqueta can play on the left quite well, and I'm kind of intrigued to see how that works. Kilman as a wide centre-back is a weird, but I think could be a good little move. He's got good dribbling ability, not bad at crossing. We'll see how that develops at the end of the season, whether he manages to pick up a few assists. But Todibo and Sildilia at the back with Areola in behind, I think is solid. And in the first game of the season, it worked exactly how I hoped, and it was the perfect game for Füllkrug up front, because the German managed to bag himself a hat-trick at the Vitality Stadium against Bournemouth, which was completed by a 94th minute winner in a 3-2 win. However, the next 2 games did not fill me with much confidence, with losses to Villa and Palace. So I've decided to change it up slightly and go for 2 strikers, so Jarrod Bowen can assist Füllkrug up there instead of starting from a wider position, and I've changed the mentality defensive from positive, as well as adding depth by signing Amadou Onana, who was long-listed by Aston Villa somehow in his first season at the club, and Rodrigo Gomez, who again was long-listed by Wolves. Even with those long signings, our squad still felt small, but we persisted with a great first half of the season, and we picked up wins like this against Manchester City, beating them 3-0, but also some silly results like losing against Ipswich Town. But then we went through a very tough December where we were playing a lot of the big teams and picked up a lot of draws, where we were currently struggling down in 13th place going into January. And remember, we need European qualification this season or else we were without a job. But maybe we can achieve this through winning the Carabao Cup. However, Chelsea stuffed us across 2 legs 3-0, which means that won't happen either. The results around that Chelsea game though gave us some hope in January, as we went through a perfect period, and a push into the second half of the season is just what we needed now, and only 3 points behind those top spots. Unfortunately, it's no FA Cup this year as Manchester City dump us out in extra time. In the Premier League though, it's been real positive, and that man Füllkrug is enjoying himself. And the February and March were just as good as January and helped pull West Ham up into a 5th place spot in the Premier League. But our remaining fixtures include 4 of the top 6 still to play. And we took a heavy loss to Arsenal. But we also beat Manchester United 2-0 at home thanks to a wonderful second goal by Jarrod Bowen, who also scored the only goal against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And although we lost to Liverpool, we still managed to complete our first task set by the board of qualifying for European football by finishing in 6th place and actually only 2 points behind the top 4 and on the same points as Arsenal on 65, while Füllkrug bagged 21 goals this season. So the board remains satisfied in keeping us at West Ham for now. Finances are looking good still despite a bit of debt, and the board are backing us with ambition again as they give us £72 million in the summer transfer budget. But I had secretly made a move for another player last summer, agreeing to buy Ruben van Bommel from AZ Alkmaar at the end of the campaign. And that was a smart move as he has been fantastic this year and his price would already probably be a lot more. However, last season I was rather disappointed with Max Kilman, and the new signing is attracting bids elsewhere and I'm actually going to accept. He eventually chose to go to Saudi Arabia, but don't worry, I have a replacement in mind. Because my scouts kept bringing Gonzalo Inacio to my attention, and the Portuguese left-footed centre-back was interested now that we have European football and is a perfect replacement for around 45 million. I also noticed the Spanish keeper Unai Simon was available on a free transfer, and I was right on that, although there is interest from other clubs. But somehow, Bournemouth is the team he has selected to join, rejected myself and even Manchester United. Chelsea came in with a huge bid for Jarrod Bowen, and although the money is good, Bowen is a leader in our side and someone who I'd rather keep around, so I rejected the transfer offer. I did, however, sell Danny Ings to Everton, who was scoring a lot off the bench last season, but I had another replacement in mind. Because in came Jonas Wind. The Danish striker is a class above Ings at this point in his career, and we brought him to the club for £40 million. However, the board are concerned about the size of our squad, and they do have a point. It is rather small. And so on deadline day, I picked up Marquinhos on loan from Arsenal, as well as signing Nicolo Fagioli, who was transfer listed by Juventus for just 12 million. No real tactical changes this season, although the squad is looking strong and there's lots of options for positions now. And in the first game of the season, it was a tough one against Chelsea. However, we managed to snag a lucky winner in the 93rd minute, as well as getting a draw at Anfield in the second fixture. Of course, the board wanted European football, and we have our fixtures in the Europa League this season, and we begin our campaign at home to Marseille. And that began as a really tight and ropey game until the second half, when we kicked on and won the game 3-1. With our European campaign underway, we were hard to beat, even drawing against Napoli with a late equaliser, and we looked comfortable to qualify. There is no denying that it has definitely affected our league form though, and we've picked up 6 losses already this season. Despite this though, we still sit in 5th place going into the new year. We were even struggling in the FA Cup as we couldn't beat my hometown club Argyle, who took us to a 4th round replay, which thankfully we took seriously and won 4-0 to progress through to the next round and avoid an embarrassing exit. In the Europa League phase, we remained unbeaten and qualified in the top 8, meaning we go straight through to the round of 16 where Besiktas awaits. Meanwhile, we also still keep holding on to that 5th place position in the Premier League. We cruise past Besiktas after a good first leg, and next we face an old opponent from earlier in the season in Marseille. It was curtains for us though in the FA Cup as Liverpool defeated us 4-1 in the quarter-final. So our main attention has actually switched to Europa League, and we made our first leg count against Marseille, winning 3-1 at the London Stadium. And although we lost 2-0 in Marseille, we do scrape through on penalties, with Manchester United ahead of us in the semi-final. We are still sneakily picking up points in the Premier League, however, and picking up big wins, with players such as Van Bommel really stepping up. He has been clutch signing this season, scoring 10 Premier League goals and never missing a single game. The first leg of the Europa League at Old Trafford was tough, and we go into the second leg a goal behind. But a Füllkrug brace helps us to a 3-2 win at the London Stadium, and it's penalties again in the semi-final. However, in the shootout, we were absolutely shocking. And that is where Manchester United progress and we are eliminated. We did get our revenge though, stuffing Manchester United 5-0 on the final day of the Premier League season, which actually meant we overtook them on goal difference to finish in 3rd place in the league table, which is absolutely fantastic. Füllkrug is still our top scorer despite now reaching his mid-30s, and Jonas Wind has proved to be a very good signing, as did Van Bommel, who filled in so many different player positions this season, with the board backing us with another £60 million this summer. thanks to us really impressing as manager after these 2 seasons. Trouble is though, they've set out for us to win some trophies too, and so far we have none. So I decided to start cutting some players, beginning with Guido Rodriguez, who we moved to Saudi for 33 million. Along with Lucas Paqueta, who you may think I'm mad for selling, but he is 29 now and only with 13 natural fitness, so I decided to cash in. My replacement for Rodriguez in the centre midfield was James Garner, who is fantastic, and I plucked him from Everton for 60 million. An attacking midfielder came in from Germany called Gruder, who my scouts made a big deal about because his release clause was less than 15 million. I also signed Alvaro Rodriguez, who was transfer listed at Real Madrid for 18 million, but he is very undeveloped and needs some love. I decided to go big, and the rest of my transfer budget went on a new #1 goalkeeper with Chevalier coming in from Lille for 32 million. And with these new signings in the door, the team feels really good at the start of the season, and we took 3 points off Manchester United on the opening day. First season in the Champions League, and we get some big boys in there in our 8 league games. But we pulled off some shocks, including this 4-0 win over Manchester City. That wasn't the only shocks we were providing, because as well as the Champions League, in the league we're going into the Christmas period in 2nd spot. And in January we played 2 games in the FA Cup, a trophy I'm really going for this season, resting players before those games, and it's paying off with 2 good wins. In the Champions League we finished well in the league phase with only 2 losses, and went into the playoff round and defeating Sturm Graz. And now we head into the round of 16 against Marseille. And still, as we head into March, we sit in 2nd position in the Premier League. Back to the FA Cup though, and in a game we dominated against Leicester, we put ourselves into the quarterfinals with a 3-1 win, which we breezed through and into the semi-final with a win against Sheffield Wednesday. Tough fixture against Chelsea in the semis, but I fancy our chances if we do go through against Everton or Ipswich. Unfortunately, we couldn't get past Marseille in the Champions League though, and in that semi-final of the FA Cup, it was tough from the beginning, as Chelsea took the lead in the first half from Nicholas Jackson. However, right from kickoff, we got ourselves an equaliser through Nicholas Füllkrug. And very late into the game, James Ward-Prowse worked well down the right-hand side, and there's his unreal crossing again to find Jonas Wind for the winner. And as I thought it might be, it's Everton in the final, who he actually played on the final day after stealing James Garner, and it finished all square in the league. And we've picked up way too many draws as of late, and ended up finishing down in 4th place unfortunately. But it's FA Cup final time, so there's nothing to be sad about, but we do have players missing such as James Ward-Prowse, who will be a big loss, but I still think this team can lift the trophy. Everton though scared us early on, and yes, that is Frank Kessie that they replaced James Garner with. My dad would love that. And Dwight McNeil picked up an early goal. It took a while for us to get into the game, but again we found some joy down the wings with a deep cross to the back post for Jonas Wind to leap highest and claim an equaliser. And it was our other big boy in the second half, Füllkrug, who picked up a second this time round for the rebound. We were holding on as the time was ticking away. Someone was being naughty and picked up a second yellow card. That's Frank Kessie off for an early bath, hopefully not with my dad. But let's get that image out of our minds, because we have done it. We have won the FA Cup for the first time in West Ham's history since 1980, which is obviously going to please the board, getting 1 knocked off in just 3 seasons into the project. So that's our first trophy at West Ham, and first of 3 FA Cups the board are requesting. And with the transfer budget we had, I decided to buy Lenny Yoro, who could become a future starting centre-back for the rest of my years here at West Ham. Because right now, I didn't really know what position on the pitch that we could improve at this point. And players like Ruben van Bommel, who was a gamble in the past, have become vital members, developing well and playing big parts in our season. I did also bring in a backup goalkeeper on the cheap, however. And our season did begin with a loss in the Community Shield, as well as losing our first game to none other than Everton, which makes it 3 competitive games in a row. And I don't know whether we were just asleep or something, but we were struggling at the start of the season. Worryingly, we carried that form into the Champions League fixtures too, with a loss to AC Milan. It took a while in Season 4, but eventually something changed and we found our feet, picking up results like this mad 4-0 away win to Chelsea. Even in the Champions League, we finished in the top 8 after only losing 2 games and winning 6. But our bad start meant that we were really still far behind in the Premier League. Oh, and also, we were already out of the FA Cup in the 3rd round. Cheers, Bournemouth. The season domestically was kind of over with 3 games to go, and the highest position we could realistically achieve is 4th place, and the lowest being 6th. However, in Europe, Europe, we first defeated Manchester City in the round of 16 with a 3-0 second leg win, followed by knocking out PSG in the quarterfinals, which by the way was a 97th minute winner in the second leg by Jonas Wind, which means we faced Real Madrid in the semi-final. But the first leg did not go great, unfortunately. And then we lost the second leg 2-1 as well. So with a 5th place finish in the league campaign, the Champions League run was the only good thing about season number 4. Not to mention, we were also losing Fulkrug, who is now retired, so we need to start thinking about the squad. First out the door was Fagioli, who left for the same amount of money as his replacement. That man being Harvey Elliott, who we brought off of Liverpool. The main amount of money that we brought in was actually from Somerville though, who was never really broken into our first team after a few loan deals, even to Real Madrid, and he's gone to Saudi Arabia for 50 million. So I decided to spend big on Carlos Baleba, an outstanding all-round midfielder who we got from Brighton. And although he did cost us a fair amount of money, he's world class at 95 million. We did also pick up Savio for a really low cost of just 19 million from Man City, who was transfer listed. And I did also find this Australian new gen centre midfielder with 20 dribbling at age 19. He looks really good, and already I've loaned him out to PAOK this season for first team football after his 2 million transfer. I have decided to change the tactic though to see how this fares in the first half of the season. We've had a good enough team to win trophies. I just need a system that will work for them. Early signs against Palace in the first match were very positive, and the last player we sold this summer was Edson Alvarez, who wasn't going to play much with Baleba and Ghana, so he left for 20 million. We soon encountered a problem though, and again the bad run of games all came at once and cost us big time, dropping 9 points and slipping down to 7th place, and now 9 points off top. So I decided to make a drastic change and switch to a 4-4-1-1 tactic. There are some new faces in the squad to achieve this, but injuries are killing us too, like Rodriguez, who's now out for a long time with a broken leg. So I first brought in Andy Harwood, who's an English left back, very young, and cost just £10 million from Malmo of all clubs, which he came through the youth system. We had a right back at the club already in Sildilia, but I brought in a backup in Van der Bremt, because he's cheap for just 1.5. But I couldn't help but sign a player my scouts brought to my attention, who's only 5'3", but still a good right back, and only cost £10 million. And the tactic did start to work well as we battered teams and dominated games like this one against Wolves. The Champions League was good, not great, in the league phase for us. And after knocking out Monaco in the playoff round, we then defeated Manchester City once again in the round of 16 and now hold a 3-1 first leg advantage over Liverpool. But at Anfield, they somehow knocked us out in extra time thanks to this goal by Diogo Jota. And then also, they beat us in the semi-final of the FA Cup at Wembley on penalties. We got our revenge though in the Premier League, beating them 4-0, and that win confirmed our top 4 status in season number 5. However, overall this is a bad season for us, and at the halfway point we still only have 1 FA Cup, 0 Premier Leagues, and definitely no European trophies. It might be time for us to be brutal this summer and sell a couple of players who have been here for a while and just not quite providing the goods no more for the sake of the challenge, while working around this brand new system. And as we go into season number 6, we have around £60 million to play with already. So the first player leaving, which to be fair has had bids in every season, is Jared Bowen, and I finally caved in now that he's 32 to sell him for 30 million. As well as Mavropanos, who has also moved to Saudi Arabia for 8 million. I did then need to bring in some homegrown talent, which might have meant that I've overspent on Oscar Bob, but £54 million for the guy who can play anywhere going forward isn't too bad. Especially when I saved money signing Humberto Carranza, who comes in, who would originally go straight into the under-21s for a season, or out on loan, and comes in the door when we've only spent 6 million. Mittelstadt also came in an end of contract deal for free to cover at left back. And the final signing before the season begins is Nobrega, who I'm thinking will be a long-term replacement for Mohamed Kudus in a season or 2. This season, however, has started off much better than the last, with a 6-1 win against Manchester City early on, who are favourites to win the title, and a Rodriguez hat-trick too. And by January, we were still in the run-in for the title with Manchester City just ahead of us. They were also the team to knock us out of the FA Cup, however. And our good run in the Premier League continues, and for the time being, we've actually jumped into the top spot ahead of City by 2 points. And we are in the quarters of the Champions League but face Real Madrid next, in which a former Real Madrid player, Rodriguez, went through in the 92nd minute to knock them out. But ever since that match, we've played bad and even lost the first leg of the semi-final of the Champions League against Arsenal and dropped down into second spot in the Premier League with just 3 games left. However, Man City lost the next fixture, giving us a chance. A chance we wasted as we drew to Brighton, which was the same result of the second leg of the Champions League, meaning the semi-final is where we fell short. But somehow, Manchester City are determined to screw this up and lost 3 Premier League games in a row. And this time, we didn't waste the opportunity, winning both of our games comfortably, and we crown ourselves as champions of England with 1 game left to play. And that means winning the first Premier League of 3 that was set for our target, and the first league title in West Ham's history. But the MVP of this season has to be Rodriguez, who scored a lot of goals this season, developing well and gave us the push we needed. And in the bank, we have £66 million to now go back to back if that's possible. One player I'm really pleased with is Leny Yoro. His development has been outstanding and someone to base my defense around. And I've pumped more into my transfer budget by selling both Harvey Elliott and Gruda to Saudi Arabia with players ready to step into their positions. The first signing through the door though is a young centre-back who's good with both feet from Morocco, who we brought from PSV for 83 million. And that decision was made because we decided to sell Todibo for 40 million. If there's anything to show how far we've come, it's this, signing Real Madrid's #1 goalkeeper for 91 million though. 22-year-old striker Salza also joined us from Brazil, with Jonas Wind wanting to leave the club. However, he did stay in the Premier League, going to Everton though after a good few years at the club for 43 million. And my final signing, I won the race against Manchester City for the signature of Archie Gray, and the midfield maestro signs for 70 million. So with the new signings in the door, we are set out to retain our league title, which all was going well by the new year as we sat top of the league, but with Spurs creeping just behind us. The Champions League ties went well, albeit we got battered by Barcelona, but we still won the other 7 games to qualify straight into the round of 16, in which we head to Portugal to face Benfica. The FA Cup was going well with wins over Spurs, Bournemouth in a replay and Crystal Palace, as we now go into the quarter-finals to play Bristol City. In a game we won 4-2 to take us into the semi-finals against Leicester. Unfortunately, back in the Champions League we crashed out of that on penalties to Benfica. But we did however play brilliantly in the semi-final of the FA Cup, winning the game at Wembley 3-1. Not to mention, we are in prime position to win the league title ahead of Spurs, still by 2 points. However, in a game we dominated with 15 shots to 1, we lost at home to Liverpool 1-0, followed by losing to Leicester in the following match in the 94th minute. And we threw away the league title within the last 3 games to Spurs. Not good when we need 2 more league titles now in the remaining 3 seasons. However, in the FA Cup final against Arsenal, we stepped up and we had to find a late equaliser to take the game to extra time, but again, we dominated the match and pinched a winner in the 121st minute, clinching our 2nd FA Cup, meaning there's just 1 more to go. So to kick the transfer outgoings off, we say goodbye to James Garner this season, who goes to Saudi for 50 million, as well as Savio, who goes to Napoli for 14 million. And my only 2 transfers in were Ruben Vidal, who is a young Spanish midfielder from Real Madrid, as well as Patrick Tavares, who is a world-class left-back that we signed for Everton for a lot of money, but he is worth it. But we started this season well, picking up back-to-back 6-0 wins. And we were smashing our way through the league campaign this season, sitting top of the league. Not to mention the performances were also really exciting to witness. And in Europe, we dominated the league phase, winning all 8 games, including against Real Madrid. In the FA Cup, however, it was a different story. Everton whooped our ass. However, there was another occasion where we were knocking out English sides in Europe. And this time it's Arsenal who felt our power in the round of 16. But the draws keep giving us more English clubs to face. And meanwhile, we are opening up a gap in the Premier League. But Musiala's Manchester City, however, was 1 step too far for us in the Champions League this season. And it's a quarter-final exit once again. Recently though, the form in our Premier League campaign has also dropped off, causing the race for the league title to be a lot closer than what we hoped with 3 games left. And so it was really important that the next match against Norwich, we were stamping out our authority and winning the game. And we only just managed to do so, creeping in a 10-0 win. Meanwhile, Newcastle are missing penalties and losing to Forest. But it wasn't all smooth sailing through to the end of the season though, as we lose at Anfield 1-0 in the penultimate game. And so on the last game of the season against Arsenal, we needed a win, and our Brazilian striker Sousa stepped up, scoring the only 2 goals of the game. Newcastle lost to Ipswich on the final day too, which meant we won the league by 6 points in the end, and Sousa was the second top scorer in the league with 23 goals. And trusting him as our number 1 striker has definitely paid off, and there's still a lot of potential left for him to grow. But that's the Premier League title number 2 out of 3 that we need to win, and we're 8 seasons down. We have had some fantastic performances this season, which you can see from the statistics, but we have another £60 million to keep improving this team. Season 9 though, and we still got a lot to win. We still need 1 more FA Cup, 2 more Premier Leagues, and of course, a European trophy within 2 seasons. While this is the summer, we finally sold Mohamed Kudus after he had a bit of a rough season last year, but we still managed to get £54 million for the 32-year-old. 2 players came in, and the first is Daniel Sands, who is the first player I have found that is natural as a right midfielder, and he is world class and only cost £68 million. Following him through the door is Helio Perez, who plays at centre-back, but I have loaned him back to Flamengo for game time. Still rocking the 4-4-1-1, and as you can see, players are stepping up and developing well with the game time we are giving them, and it's paying off. However, results to begin with have been a little bit ropey. As the season grew though, so did we, and we started to find unbelievable form. Picking up win after win with a few draws now and then, and only 1 loss to Everton, sitting us top of the league a point ahead of Manchester United. And we carried that form into January with the FA Cup fixture. Like this result against Bournemouth, battering them 5-0 away from home. Then going through to the 5th round and beating Burnley 2-0. Then we went to St James's Park against Newcastle in the quarter-finals and lost 1-0. Yep, I was shocked at how different our performances was. Especially because we were on such good run of form around that time and literally could not stop winning games until that quarter-final came up. Even in the Champions League, we strolled through the league phase and then on to knocking out Atletico Madrid in the round of 16, and now our old enemies Manchester City next. And we somehow managed to beat them 5-4 across 2 legs to face Real Madrid with the semi-final. Where our defenders somehow forgot how good Jude Bellingham was as he waltzed through and scored to knock us out. But still, Premier League-wise, we comfortably picked up the title, only losing 3 games, and Sousa by 28 goals. His development and goals have been crucial in the fact of helping us out to go on to lift the title, and that's our 3rd league title to complete our challenge. So for now, that's 1 challenge down and 2 to go. As we somehow still need to win the FA Cup and the Champions League this year. So I decided to sell both Inacio and Sildilia to allow replacements and more minutes to younger players. And I brought in a centre midfield who can fill in at centre-back as well from Portugal, and what a bargain he was too for his ability for just 53 million. As well as a backup striker who I signed from Aston Villa for 45 million. With the remaining transfer budget, I picked up Fulham's keeper to rival Bartra in goal as number 1, plus he was injured. And with this team, I was feeling confident, and we were off to a good start. Absolutely dominating the Champions League phase, winning all 8 games. And into the quarters of the FA Cup after a 7-1 win. In the round of 16 of the Champions League, we flew past Leverkusen 7-0 on aggregate. But we were then drawn against Manchester United, who we've also got in the semi-final of the FA Cup after knocking out Burnley. The same Manchester United who we trail in the league campaign right now, and the same Manchester United who knocked us out of the Carabao Cup. Which, by the way, I've somehow not even got to the final once in 10 seasons. First leg of the Champions League though, and we snatch a 1-0 win, putting in a better performance in the second leg and knocking them out to go into the semi-finals. Which was the same result at Wembley in the FA Cup too. And it's into the FA Cup final we go. In our way of lifting the Champions League though is Manchester City again. And our dream looked over because in the first leg at the Etihad, Manchester City beat us 2-0 without us really putting up much of a fight. And then boom, we beat them 6-0 in the second leg. and somehow we are in both finals. The FA Cup final then, and we thought we had won it all with this goal went in the 94th minute. However, even later drama as Wolves took the game to extra time with a goal from kickoff in the 96th minute. Thankfully though, the strength of our squad was too much for them and they couldn't stop us from scoring an extra time winner. 3-2 winners of our third FA Cup. And that is another challenge ticked off, with just the one big one remaining. However, we've not faced this Bayern Munich side in the knockouts yet, nor have we ever got this far, and it showed. They were way more experienced and they got the job done, defeating us 2-0. And although we had a valiant effort winning 3 league titles, 3 FA Cups, ultimately we failed this challenge. Now the save game file is available for Patreon members or YouTube channel members on the £5 tier, so check out this video now of me and my dad rebuilding PSV and Feyenoord, and make sure you're subscribed to help us to get to 150k.